Hello everyone, I am the Meta Kirby, and welcome to my channel, the Commander Tavern. Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Brewery is a series on this channel showcasing my spicy brews and other deck techs. On this episode of the Brewery, I'll be discussing my take on a commander from the Wilds of Eldraine set boosters, Korvold Gleeful Glutton. If you like this deck or any of the cards I'll be mentioning throughout the video, please consider using my TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing those cards. You can find that link down in the description. It'll really help out the channel, at no extra cost to you. But the very best way you can help support the channel is with my Patreon. There are plenty of perks for being a patron, such as early access to certain videos, exclusive deck techs, gifts, and more for as little as $1. You can also become a channel member for just 99 cents. Show off your support with the logo next to your name and exclusive emojis. Or you can always just support my channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and sharing, which also helps out a lot. I put out a video every Monday, so you don't want to miss out. You can join my Discord server for free if you want to join the Commander Tavern community. All pertinent links are down in the description. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Korvold is a 4/4 Dragon Noble with Flying, Trample, and Haste for 5 generic, 1 black, 1 red, and 1 green. But don't let that casting cost fool you. Fortunately, he has a built-in cost reduction effect. He costs 1 generic less for each permanent card type you sacrifice the turn you cast him. For those keeping track, there are currently 7 types on permanents that'll help you achieve this: Artifact, Battle, Creature, Enchantment, Land, Planeswalker, and Tribal. So this also helps if you've got some commander attacks on him. That's not all though. Whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you put X +1/+1 counters on him, and you draw X cards, where X is the number of permanent types in your graveyard. Unfortunately, there is one caveat to keep in mind. While sacrificing a Tribal permanent helps reduce Korvold's casting cost, Tribal is not a permanent type, so it, along with any instants and sorceries in your graveyard, will not count towards that X value. This means that X could be 6 at most. That's still pretty strong, especially if you fan out various card types throughout your deck, sort of like with Atraxa Grand Unifier. Therefore, I brewed this deck with a decent enough ratio of card types depending on their utility, considering it's a Voltron deck that aims to get Korvold out as quickly as possible. So how are we going to coax Korvold out of the command zone early on? Well, he's got quite the appetite. Fortunately, the deck's running what every grown dragon needs: eggs. The deck's running Arkham's Astrolabe, Barbed Sextant, Chromatic Sphere, Chromatic Star, Mossfire Egg, Shadowblood Egg, Terrarian, and Wizard's Rockets. This is also a heavy theme that you will notice throughout this deck. Most of the cards have a built-in sacrifice outlet. Since they're an artifact being sacrificed, that's 1 permanent type down, 6 to go. In any case, all of these artifacts cost just 1 mana to cast and have a net loss in mana of 0, while also providing value since these artifacts filter color while also drawing cards. Speaking of card advantage, Dark Prophecy, Grim Haruspix, Midnight Reaper, Moldervine Reclamation, Erebos Bleak-Hearted, and Liliana Dreadhorde General are also in the deck. Not only does the deck have plenty of self-sacrificing artifacts, it also has plenty of self-sacrificing creatures. These effects turn those creatures into X too. Just crack them for value along with the card draw. Since Erebos is also an enchantment, if you sacrifice him to any outlet, it'll count as 2 permanent types, reducing Korvold's cost by 2 generic. Liliana is also one of 4 planeswalkers in the deck, all have them having all of their abilities relevant here. In any case, Liliana's triggered ability is a natural inclusion. But her +1 creates sacrifice fodder and chump blockers. Her -4 ability has the table sacrifice 2 creatures, which also benefits us. Her ultimate is practically a one-sided board wipe that bypasses Indestructible. The other 3 planeswalkers in the deck are Jessica Thrice Reborn, Vraska Golgari Queen, and Renan 6. They don't have built-in sacrifice outlets, but with the sacrifice effects in the deck, we can still manage to sacrifice any planeswalker if it came down to it. Jessica is amazing in Voltron decks because its triple damage ability can help Korvold end games in a single swing so long as he's got 7 power. Her -X ability is for emergency use only, in case you really need to get rid of some creatures. Vraska's +2 ability is awesome in this deck since you sacrifice any other permanent. This is amazing with permanents that don't have built-in sacrifice effects, as well as those with multiple types. Sacrificing an enchantment creature or tribal artifact, etc. goes a long way. Her -3 ability destroys any cheap permanent, which is great removal. Her emblem isn't the goal of running her, but getting it essentially turns any creature into a game ender, not just our hasty flying trampling commander. Renan 6 is amazing since the deck has so many lands with built-in sacrifice effects. We'll see those in a moment though. Her -1 ability isn't that good, but it's great at pinging mana dorks. Her ultimate isn't that effective since the deck isn't running many instants and sorceries. However, it has plenty of interaction, so the emblem isn't entirely useless. As for those lands with built-in sacrifice effects, the deck would always have been running all 9 Fetchlands because they provide value in a 3-color deck like this one. But sacrificing a Fetchland the turn you want to cast Korvold will lower his cost by 1. You can also get them back each turn if Renan 6 survives to do so. The deck is not running only all 3 shock lands, all 3 snow lands, and 2 of each snow basic land for Askrim's Astrolabe, but also Ziatora's Proving Ground and Dryad Arbor. So reusing these fetches goes a long way to not only thin the library of lands, but getting out most of the deck's mana base. The best thing about fetching for Dryad Arbor in early turns before you're set up for Korvold is that sacrificing Dryad Arbor to sacrifice Outlet discounts Korvold's cost by 2 since it has 2 permanent types, all without taking up a slot in the deck. But the fetch lands aren't the only ones. The deck's also running Dwarven Ruins, Ubban Stronghold, Havenwood Battleground, Geothermal Crevice, and Crystal Vein. While all but one of these enter the battlefield tapped, they can tap and sacrifice to add 2 mana to your mana pool. This is incredibly strong when it comes to casting Korvold. The sacrifice reduces his cost by 1, and then you're still getting 2 mana to pay for his actual cost. In a sense, they provide 3 net mana to help get Korvold out. Or, if you played them early game, can help for an explosive turn, especially with Red and 6 and Crucible of Worlds, helping you recover lands from your graveyard. The Crucible lets you play them from the graveyard, which is amazing, so this is yet another way to reuse all of your fetch lands each turn. Other ways to sacrifice permanents for net positive mana is thanks to Lotus Petal, Blood Pet, Tinderwall, Wild Canter, and Goldhound. Keep in mind that the eggs mentioned in the beginning provide a net mana of 0. However, these are net positive once they're on the battlefield since it's free to sacrifice them. While Lotus Petal might seem like the best one since it costs 0 to cast, I feel like Goldhound is the better of these since it's both an artifact and a creature, discounting Korvold's generic cost by 2 when it sacrifices. And since you're getting that mana of any color, you're essentially getting 3 net mana from it. Don't overlook it when building your own deck. Bazaal Throw, Gaia's Touch, Reckless Barbarian, Satyr Hedonist, and Vessel of Volatility are also included, but these provide 2 net mana when sacrifice. Some require paying first, but that extra mana can be seen as a rebate. But sacrificing any of these will essentially get you 3 net mana to help cast Korvold. What I love most about Gaia's Touch and Vessel of Volatility is that they're enchantments with a built-in sacrifice effect. This helps increase the number of permanent types you could potentially sacrifice in a single turn to really get Korvold out. For example, Gaia's Touch and Goldhound alone are already providing 6 net mana. If you also sacrifice a fetch land that turn, for a land that can enter untapped and tap for black, you just cast Korvold. As easy as turn 3. Continuing on, we have Heart of Ramos, Horn of Ramos, and Skull of Ramos. As far as mana rocks in Commander go, too many people would disregard these as being useful, much less any good. However, they're amazing here. Sure, they cost 3 mana, but you don't have to sacrifice them to get that mana. You can tap them for mana. Then, when you want to cast Korvold, you can tap them for mana, sacrifice them to get an additional mana, and then the sacrifice will discount 1 generic. So these rocks give us 3 net mana to help cast Korvold. At 3 MC for a casting cost, that sounds like a pretty decent deal. Granted, the deck is still running Soul Ring, which will obviously be a mana rock to help pay Korvold, but for also anything else. This rock is ubiquitous for a reason. But the only other mana rock in the deck is the Canter of Endless Water. Not only does the deck have plenty of card advantage, the commander himself also provides a nice card advantage effect. So Reliquary Tower is also included for good measure. Thought Vessel is omitted because the deck doesn't have many multicolored mana generating effects that are on permanents. Fortunately, it can run Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth and Jebediah Cradle of Growth to help circumvent that. Once you finish fetching for everything, this helps fetch lands tap for colored mana, as well as any other land in the deck that can tap for colorless or only a single color. Them turning all into mountains into triomes and all other lands into bayous is already pretty strong. Speaking of, you know I can't go over mana acceleration without mentioning Farseek, Nature's Lore, 3 Visits, and Into the North. The latter complements my favorite ramp trifecta because the deck is running 9 snow-covered lands. This makes it easier to cast Arkham's Astrolabe when you have it, plus the obvious land-based mana acceleration. Besides permanents that self-sacrifice for card advantage and mana acceleration, the deck is running plenty of them that sacrifice for interaction. Demolition Field is able to deal with any annoying non-basic land like Maze of Ith and its ilk, which is a bane to Voltron decks, as well as lands like Gaia's Cradle, Cabal Coffers, Nykthos, etc. It also replaces itself with a basic land, which is amazing. It does cost 2 to activate and then itself, leaving you down by 3 mana, if you're planning on using its sacrifice to also lower Korvold's cost. But that could be seen as a bonus more than a detriment, since you're able to get rid of something as well as getting at least 1 mana rebate. Cindervines and Seal of Primordium help deal with artifacts and enchantments. While the Seal is free to sacrifice but not the Cindervines, at least it also punishes opponents that cast non-creature spells, so it still works while just existing and can then be used as interaction. Since it costs 1 to activate, you at least get a net mana of 0 for casting Korvold. Seal of Doom and Smoldering Tar are 2 more self-sacrificing enchantments for removal. The latter has the added bonus of having a player lose 1 life during your upkeep. That might seem negligible in a 40 life format like Commander, but at least it's doing something while you're saving it for removal and or reducing Korvold's cost. Pernicious Deed is a board wipe in enchantment form. It is symmetrical, but that's fine. If we're able to generate the mana and cost reduction to get Korvold that same turn, even after sinking X into Pernicious Deed, we have a hasty commander that can swing in unopposed. This enchantment helps end games, or at least players. The deck is still running interaction like Assassin's Trophy, Beast Within, and Chaos Warp though, which is why Renin 6's emblem is still useful. Permanent interaction is telegraphed, but you can't go wrong with keeping mana open for these. Same with Crux of Fate. Korvold is essentially the only creature we care about. This will essentially wipe the board except for Korvold. Thanks to Renin 6's emblem, you could potentially do this each turn. Hopefully you're not facing a dragon deck. Dictate of Erebos and Gravepact to provide further interaction, albeit synergistically. Not only are we sacrificing our own creatures, but whenever any of them were to die for whatever reason, our opponents will also have to sacrifice creatures. These cards do so much work here. Besides enchantment-based interaction, battles can also help out at that. Invasion of Ravnica, Invasion of Karsus, and Invasion of Fiora aren't just included because battle is another permanent type that Korvold will care about. There are 3 of the 4 battles in the deck, but we'll see the 4th one near the end of the video. In any case, each of these have interaction on their ETB trigger. Granted, it might seem difficult to sacrifice them, but the deck has ways of sacrificing any permanent, and not just via Vraska either. In any case, these battles can transform into creatures that are useful. Not only that, but when these creatures die, they exist as battles in the graveyard. This is amazing for Korvold's combat damage trigger, so even if we're unable to sacrifice them as battles, having them as battles in the graveyard is still useful. Lignify is a tribal enchantment that provides interaction. Unfortunately, this is the only tribal permanent with interaction, but it's still great. If we're able to sacrifice it, it reduces Korvold's cost by 2. Keep in mind that in the graveyard, it only counts as an enchantment for Korvold's combat damage trigger. The other tribal cards in the deck are Bitter Blossom, Eldrazi Conscription, and Cloak and Dagger. When testing, 4 Planeswalkers, 4 battles, and 4 tribal cards was a good enough ratio to try and maximize card types as much as possible without bogging the deck down with bad cards. Lignify was great removal, but Bitterthorn is amazing at amassing chump blockers and sacrifice fodder. Eldrazi Conscription is backbreaking when enchanting our commander. Cloak and Dagger is also great when attached to our commander since it grants Shroud. Speaking of protecting our commander, Swiftfoot Boots, Champion's Helm, and Mithril Coat have to be included. The deck is Voltron after all, and although the deck is green, Korvold does cost 8 to cast the first time. That's not cheap. We have to do work to reduce that cost, not just accelerate mana like green decks do, but it is possible to cast him multiple times in a game if it came down to it, so these 4 equipment are good enough. Plus, Heroic Intervention is also thrown in for good measure. Casting this in response to holding priority to your Pernicious Deed activating is Chef's Kiss, and we know that Korvold is hungry. Speaking of Korvold being hungry, let's finally see the most important cards in the deck. Those that provide non-specific permanent sacrifice outlets. Apart from Vraska, Claws of Gix and Baba Lysaga Night Witch provide a repeatable permanent sacrifice. For just 1 mana, Claws of Gix can sacrifice any permanent. This might seem counterproductive since the net mana will be 0, since it costs 1 to activate. However, this is no different than the eggs. Also keep in mind that Korvold also cares about permanent types in the graveyard. And if you're sacrificing things with more than 1 permanent type, this grants 1 net mana. Sacrificing an artifact creature, land creature, enchantment creature, tribal enchantment, tribal artifact, enchantment land, etc. will give you 1 net mana. Speaking of enchantment lands, Urza Saga is another permanent with a built-in sacrifice outlet. However, this is more implicit than the others. Whenever a saga reaches its final chapter, it's sacrificed as a state-based action. Therefore, it will count towards Korvold's cost reduction. Since it has 2 types, it reduces it by 2. If that weren't enough, we can use it to cheat Claws of Gix onto the battlefield from our library, or any egg, or even Soul Ring if need be. Getting Soul Ring means that Urza Saga just helped pay for 4 generic. Oh, it's actually 5 generic, since you can tap it in response to the sacrifice. Urza Saga is thus the best self-sacrificing land for mana in the deck. Returning to topic, the other 2 sacrifice outlets are Shimatsu the Bloodcloaked and Gone Eternal Bontu. Unlike the previous ones, these only trigger once since it's when they enter the battlefield. So they're more like rituals than sacrifice outlets. That being said, if you paid 4 mana for Shimatsu, but then sacrificed an artifact, battle, creature, enchantment, land, planeswalker, and tribal permanent, you just reduce Korvold's generic cost by 7, which is amazing if it had 1 count of commander tax, getting you a net mana gain of 3. Bontu could do the same but costs 5 mana to cast. At least if it's the first time you're casting Korvold, you're essentially getting a rebate along with a 5/6 creature with menace that can tuck itself. But these creatures is where Invasion of Ikoria provides its value. The final battle in the deck is amazing since it's a creature tutor straight to the battlefield. With it we can get either Shimatsu or Zombie Bontu, or any other creature for that matter. Then we have a Battle to Sacrifice or an 8/8 with Reach that has our non-human creatures assign combat damage as if they weren't blocked. This is also amazing for Korvold. Even though he has trample and flying, it has the possibility of being blocked. Zalortha doesn't care about that. Korvold will get in regardless, which is what we want from our Voltron commanders. This brew is just an idea of how to build around Korvold Gleeful Glutton. This is by no means the only way to build him. Commanders like Korvold are blank canvases since they have no clear direction to go into. As for myself, I chalked it full of self-sacrificing permanents because they provide multiple function, whether to help reduce Korvold's cost as well as what every commander deck needs: interaction, card advantage, and mana acceleration. So I prioritized those effects first. But you could also include other cards like Spore Frog and the like, or other battles, planeswalkers, tribal permanents, etc. Or in different ratios than I did. Honestly, your imagination is the limit with this commander. I'm just glad I was able to include a lot of cards from the earliest expansions like Fallen Empires, The Dark, Alliance, and Ice Age. If you're interested in the decklist of this spicy brew of mine, you can find a link to it down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the Brewers, for their patronage. I'd also like to thank anyone using my TCG Player affiliate link. That also helps out the channel. I also want to thank any channel members. Your membership is greatly appreciated. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of The Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I am the Meta Kirby, and happy brewing.